On a continent famed the world over for big spiders, one of the biggest and most impressive of them all has gone largely unnoticed, and there's one beside the stream, right at my feet. Australia has no shortage of remarkable spiders, from tiny technicolor acrobats that dance for their dates, to heavyweight brutes packing lethal venom that may paradoxically hold a cure to the world's most deadly diseases. Spiders down under are manifold in their variety and ever a source of ceaseless fascination. For years, my own interest in these arachnids has taken me on a great many adventures, and brought me face to face with some of this country's most intriguing spiders, from the weird and the obscure to the infamous and iconic. Yet somehow, despite the obsessive fervour with which I combed the spider world, a giant had slipped through the cracks until a recent chance encounter piqued my attention. A meander along the rocky banks of a rainforest creek saw me cross paths with a large number of water-dwelling spiders. Most belonged to a single genus, Dolomedes. These, a frequent sight around creeks and ponds in many parts of the world, are impressive spiders in their own right. But as I continued on, following the gentle stream as it flowed between the smattering of boulders hewn from mountains and cliff faces far above, I soon stumbled upon a sign that the Dolomedes did not hold this watery realm to themselves. There was yet another spider here, something much, much bigger. This is the molted exoskeleton of the aptly named Megadolomedes trux, a giant cousin to the familiar Dolomedes. And with this simple find, Megadolomedes, a spider I had long been vaguely aware of, but which had hitherto existed only at the very periphery of my attention, had now been launched onto the forefront of my mind. For if an old dry husk was this impressive, a living Megadolomedes was a sight I simply had to behold. Luckily, these spiders are none too hard to locate. With a range spanning much of Australia's eastern coast and a large number of observations recorded all over southeast Queensland, I was somewhat spoiled for choice when it came to potential hunting grounds. My first stop was the lush rainforests of Tamborine Mountain, less than an hour's drive from Brisbane City. The area was jam-packed with visitors, but that, it turns out, would be the least of my worries. The first animal I encountered on my foray, mere meters from the entrance, was this very sizable cicada, and now, with the benefit of hindsight, I realised this was a warning sign, a herald of a yet unforeseen hindrance to my filming endeavours. A little further into the forest, I came across my first Megadolomedes, an enormous female perched upon a broken stump, illuminated by the gentle, flickering waves of sunlight reflected from an idle stream below, an egg sac clutched firmly between her chelicerae. I, of course, not wanting to bother an expectant mother, moved on after a couple quick shots, and it wasn't long before I found another Megadolomedes hiding beneath a bridge. This one unburdened by an egg sac and bearing some truly spectacular markings to boot. But now, with the hunt an apparent success and my quarry perched photogenically upon my hand, another challenge arose to dampen my parade, for I, of course, had company. The sheer number of fellow adventurers on the trail was hardly a bother for me. Seeing people of all ages marveling at the natural world brings me, if anything, a great deal of vicarious joy. And I figured that when I needed to escape the cacophony and excitement of the crowds, I could simply take a few steps off the track and have all the peace and tranquility I could possibly need to film and present at my leisure. Well, I was soon to be disabused of that notion. Knowing full well my voice was no match for the din of the cicadas, I threw up the white flag and vacated the rainforest. But though I may have conceded defeat to these incessant insect noise machines, I was not yet ready to forsake my mission, and decided to make one final stop, this time at the Botanic Gardens. This expanse of well-maintained lawns and topiary might seem a less reliable location to search for giant spiders than the untamed rainforest I had not long departed. But on the plus side, the serenade of cicadas was far fainter here, more akin to a pleasant background ambience than a deafening assault on the eardrums. and I figured there was no harm in trying to locate another Megadolomedes in this much more peaceful setting. Now somewhat familiar with the spider's choice of habitat, I quickly beelined for the most promising structure in view, a small wooden bridge that passed over a narrow stream, and sticking my head beneath, I was greeted by a most awe-inspiring sight. At least 4 huge Megadolomedes were skulking in the shadows, and one, very conveniently, sat well within reach of my lanky arms.
I could already tell that that was a big spider just from that first glimpse, but once you see it up close and in your hand, its enormity is just on another scale. Now, I've spent a lot of time around spiders, and this may genuinely be one of the most spectacular I have ever seen. And if you look at that huge opistosoma, I think it's pretty safe to say that this female is gravid and will probably be dropping an egg sac in the not-so-distant future.
When the time does come for her to lay her eggs, she'll protect them with her life. A certain degree of parental care is commonplace among spiders. It's very typical of these arachnids to guard their developing eggs, and in some cases they may continue to shelter and nurture the babies once they hatch. Female Megadolomedes, as we saw with that very first individual, don't just guard their egg sacs but carry them wherever they go. This behavior ensures the spider's progeny are well protected, but with her mouthparts and fangs fully occupied holding onto this precious bundle, the spider's ability to defend herself is somewhat compromised. Still, in most cases, I'd wager her sheer speed alone would be enough to get her and her offspring out of harm's way.
This particular species, Megadolomedes trux, made its entrance into the annals of academia all the way back in 1911, and it did so in a manner that was sure to impress. The species was officially named and described based off an individual collected at Ithaca Creek in Brisbane, and the spider in question was, at the time of its discovery, preying on a fully grown tree frog, a dramatic debut for this awe-inspiring arachnid. Megadolomedes trux, alongside its more southerly relative Megadolomedes australianus, which had been discovered a few decades earlier, was initially classified as part of the genus Dolomedes, the same genus as the smaller spiders that often share its watery habitat. At the time, all known specimens of both these species were females. This changed in 1980 with the first published description of male Megadolomedes, which compared to the huge females are rather diminutive creatures. The anatomy of the males was found to be sufficiently distinct from that of male Dolomedes to warrant their reclassification as part of a new, separate genus. Thus the name Megadolomedes was born. This same revision also found that Megadolomedes trux and Megadolomedes australianus exhibited no notable differences, and thus declared them to be the same species, merging the former under the latter's name. This classification, however, was not to last, as it was later recognized to have been the result of a misidentification. The newly catalogued male spiders detailed in this revision had been labeled as Megadolomedes australianus, but something didn't quite add up. Megadolomedes australianus was described from around the Sydney region, while these spiders were collected much further north in Queensland. What's more, male Megadolomedes from Sydney were found to be different from their Queensland counterparts. It was thus recognised in a subsequent 2018 revision that these supposed Megadolomedes australianus from Queensland were in fact mislabeled Megadolomedes trux all along, which led to the latter being resurrected as its own separate species once more. But the taxonomic headache surrounding these spiders did not end there. Megadolomedes, alongside a suite of other genera including Dolomedes, Dendrolycosa and Hygropoda, had long been classified as part of a diverse and widespread family of spiders called the Pisauridae. The Pisaurids, as hitherto defined, however, lacked clear defining traits. Its members were wildly disparate in appearance and behavior, and one of their only near-universal features, a tendency to construct nursery webs to protect their offspring, is something that also occurs in other spiders outside the group as well. To test whether the pisaurids formed a valid grouping, the genetics of a large number of pisaurid species, along with a few spiders from different, closely related groups, were analyzed to create a family tree detailing their relationships. It was found that Dolomedes and Megadolomedes formed their own distinct branch, and were more closely related to the wolf spiders than they were to the rest of the pisaurids. As a result of these findings, Dolomedes and Megadolomedes were reclassified as part of a separate family unto themselves, called the Dolomedidae.
Dolomedidae, be they the modestly sized Dolomedes or the enormous Megadolomedes, are masterful hunters, and they're aided by a medium few other spiders are capable of exploiting, that of course being the water. During the day, Megalodon tend to remain high and dry, but come nightfall they descend from their perches and make their way to the water's edge. There, they place their front legs upon the surface of the water, and with patience to stir the envy of any angler save Jeremy Wade, they wait, motionless, for their prey.
For these spiders, the water's surface functions as a ready-made web, just as the vast silken snare of an orb weaver captures insects flying above. The surface tension of the water entraps insects and other small critters that fall upon it, and their struggles send vibrations across the water's surface, which the spiders can use to pinpoint the location of the source and home in on their target. Despite their size, Megadolomedes can run across the water with remarkable speed, and they can even dive beneath the surface to tackle prey swimming below, with small fish and tadpoles being common targets. Like any spider, her body and legs are covered in minute hairs, and they make for an extremely effective sensory apparatus. They can pick up even the faintest of vibrations, and allow the spider to detect prey and approaching predators, even in pitch darkness. But for Megadolomedes, the hairs have an additional benefit too. When the spider takes a plunge, they trap a layer of air around her body, and allow her to breathe underwater.
This ability often comes into play when the spider feels threatened. Upon the first hint of danger, Megadolomedes drop from their perches and dive beneath the surface, where, thanks to the air trapped around their bodies, they can remain for over half an hour. And I'd wager there'd be precious few predators out there with the patience to wait for the spider to resurface, nor the wherewithal to follow it into its watery bunker.
And now, after a little bit more time, she's just settled into her standard resting pose. When it comes to handling spiders, the old mantra of if you're calm, they're calm tends to apply very strongly. Spiders are very sensitive to both vibrations and any liquids or oils that may be on your skin. So if you're nervous and your hands are trembling and sweating, then that's going to make your hand a very unpleasant surface for the spider to walk on. So chances are it's not going to be sitting still and resting like this, but moving around very, very erratically. And that in turn, of course, creates a rather uncomfortable experience for the handler as well. So it's sort of a feedback loop from there. But since I'm being calm and giving this spider no reason to be afraid, she is rewarding me with some incredibly good behavior.
Much as I enjoyed interacting with this gentle giant, and on several occasions showcasing her to passers-by in what I guess you could call the Bugs and Biology live show edition, the time eventually came for me to bid this spectacular arachnid a fond farewell, and I released her back beneath the little bridge from whence she came. From the moment I laid eyes on the prostrate form of that old dried moult, I knew Megadolomedes was a spider I had to feature on this channel, but nothing could have prepared me for just how spectacular of a sight the living animal would be. Turning my back to the forests and gardens of Tamborine Mountain, a place that had captured my wonder since first I stepped beneath the emerald canopies of the rainforest trees nearly 20 years ago, I set off home with a feeling of deep satisfaction, knowing that what I'd found and filmed was a moment of awe for myself, for several onlookers, and I hope for you as well.
If you're interested in seeing some of the other giant spiders that this country has to offer, then take a look at this video where I search for the ever so iconic huntsman under the cover of darkness. And if you'd like to learn about the grand story of the spiders from their very beginning, then head on over to this video here. And of course, don't forget to subscribe if you want to stay tuned for future content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on my next adventure.